Do we have a report on city council actions?
On the 21st, we had several projects. The first one was an annexation and zoning to RD for townhouses. And this was for the Lady Bird Landing subdivision that you looked at, and as well as the preliminary plat for that one. And that one was approved, no problems. There was an appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission decision to approve a conditional use permit for a multifamily building zoning district addressed as 1516 First Street North. This is the Sandoval was the submitter of the appeal, and Simon Hernandez was the original applicant. That appeal, I got to make sure I get this right, you guys. The appeal was denied. So the original decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission was upheld. And then the next one is a vacation of water utility easement. That one got approved. That was in the Gateway Business Center. And then the last one was a variance requiring a 5-foot minimum side and rear property structure for, or setback for a structure that had gone over into the right-of-way in the alleyway, and that one got approved as well. And that, I think, is it. Did we talk about north side? That was last week as well, right? Northwest Village?
Yeah,
Okay.
Christie
Okay.
filled us in.
All right.
Rodney, what about that one where the person had a manufactured home and they wanted to use it as office and sleeping quarters, and you guys were going to discuss it as what was the best way to handle it?
Yeah. Nothing has come back yet, so
Get back? Okay.
just waiting.
Are you doing your communication from over there? Nope, okay. You're coming back.
I'm going to tag team with Parker Bodily on this presentation. Oh, would you mind just sharing my screen? Sorry, I had it ready to go. Forgot to push the button. And then just, yep, perfect. Thank you. All right, so commissioners, we're going to go over quite a bit today. There we go. So I'm going to cover a market analysis, or Parker's going to cover the market analysis. This is MLS data that we just were told this week, and so we kind of tacked it on at the last minute just for your information. We'll go over the growth that occurred in 2022, the quarterly density report, and then a report on multifamily developments in the city in 2022. So with that, I'll turn time to Parker to present this portion.
So this is a analysis of the Intermountain MLS data. This is anybody can access this through the Intermountain MLS website. So you don't have to be a realtor to get this data. So looking at these numbers, this is the numbers of homes sold in Nampa. So it's not the valley, but just in Nampa. So if you look at where we are on the graph here, one other thing to recognize here is that 2020, we didn't have annual data. MLS didn't have that data for Canyon County, so we're missing a year there. But beyond that, the number of sales was back to 2017 level. You can see, you can say that there was a spike and we're back to normal where it was before. 2021 was certainly an anomaly, it seems. The average price of homes, however, has not dipped. We're at a new level here, 472, which is still lower than Boise and Meridian, but we're beyond what we were a few years ago even. Looking at new construction versus existing homes. So the number of existing homes sold is still above new construction homes, but you can see the gap between the two are starting to narrow. We're seeing more new construction sales than previously. As those homes are being built, obviously people are buying them prefer to buy those over existing homes. The price of new construction versus existing homes. If you look at where we are this year, existing homes just around 450. It's about at the level of new construction last year. So the existing home price of this year is last year's new construction. It just shows you how much those prices are increasing. And the gap between new construction and existing homes is widening. This graph shows the percentage of home sales in Canyon County and Nampa's share of that. So of all the houses sold in Canyon County, Nampa, 53% of those are in Nampa, which is going down, meaning that more homes are being sold in Caldwell and Middleton, further out west. The MLS breaks Nampa into three different sectors. So there's South Nampa, Northeast Nampa, and Northwest. Looking at South Nampa, they still see the most sales. There was a spike in Northeast Nampa in 2021, but it's gone down. This chart correlates with that as well. So these are new construction sales. So Northeast Nampa in 2021, there was a big spike of new construction sales in 2021. That's gone down. There was a lot of subdivisions being built in that area, and they're finished, and people are starting to buy those. But it's leveled out in 2022.
So one of the things we've heard, and some of you who are in the realtor business could probably confirm this or give us a different perspective, but one of the things we've heard is that some of the building has decreased dramatically. So the number of buildings being built right now, or homes being built right now, has decreased. And part of that, of course, is the interest rates and whether people are able to afford to buy it with these increased interest rates. But also the thing that we keep hearing is that builders are also holding back a little bit in order to keep that level up high, that price up high. And so even though they could continue to build and get buyers, they're kind of propping up the market. And Commissioner Turner, I don't know if that's consistent with what you've heard, but that's certainly something we've heard.
It's typical supply and demand.
Yeah.
So,
I'm sorry, Rodney, but it seems like the shift is from single-family homes to multifamily homes,
So I'll get into the data for that in just a second. So let's talk about population first. So this is a chart. Most of this information on this chart is from Compass and their estimates. So every 10 years we get the census data and we have to readjust our estimates. So they did have some estimates in 2020 and 2021, but in 2021 we finally got the official estimates for 2020 census. So that readjusts that baseline for population estimates. And as you can see, the growth rate that Compass has shown is pretty significant, as much as 5% in 2020. And 2018, you can see it approaching more of a 1.5%, and then back up in 2017, 6.5%. So we're a little bit all over the place, but we're consistently increasing where the rate is still high, that growth rate year by year. Let's see. So just a little bit of analysis here. Based on annual population estimates provided only by Compass, Nampa has been growing at an average growth rate of 3.36% annually if you take all those numbers. The 2020 census established a new baseline for population, nullifying already completed estimates for 2020 and 2021. Growth rates will now be tracked from that new baseline into the future, and so that's why that yellow or that orange line drops off. Using the new baseline of the 2020 census, Compass estimated Nampa's population in 2020 as 109,120. Nampa's population grew by 18,643 people from the 2010 census to the 2020 census, an average annual growth rate of 2.07%. The growth has been significant and impacts the city's ability to provide services and maintain our infrastructure. Okay, so we're going to move into subdivisions now and what's been approved in the year 2020. So 10 preliminary plats were approved in 2022, for 1,102 dwelling units, 2 short plats for 66 dwelling units, 32 final plats with a total of 1,414 dwelling units. Just as a quick comparison to 2021 numbers were 29 preliminary plats for a total of 2,710 dwelling units, 6 short plats for 26 dwelling units, and 32 final plats for 1,302 dwelling units. And you get a little better sense of that here as you look at this graph. The year 2021 was an outlier year with dramatic increases in numbers of plats and total dwelling units approved. The total number of dwelling units approved through plats in 2022 has dropped significantly from 2021 and is more in line with the units approved in 2020. The primary change is in the number of preliminary plats approved. Far less preliminary plats were approved in 2022 than last year. And just a note that these numbers, if you compared them over a 10-year time span, you would see that these numbers are dramatically more than they have been 6 years ago, 5 years ago. So, okay, so where are subdivisions?
Rodney,
where
like 50% more or 100% more?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but they're probably 100% more than what they've been in the past. I can look that data up and send it out to you all.
It'd be interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know. We had since.
And you'll see some of that in, I think I've got another slide that kind of shows some of that. We'll see if we can get to it. So where are the subdivisions going? We've heard this before, the same locations that we've talked about, to the west, to the north, and some to the southeast.
Question on that real quick.
Yeah.
Parker was just talking about how most of the growth seems like it was in South Nampa.
Some of the sales, not
Sales.
the growth. So that's tricky
Yeah.
because of, we have,
People
these
are
are
selling
subdivision approvals. So this could be
Nothing-
several years out
Could
still.
be just bare land out there.
Yeah, so we've had, in the past, we've had quite a few subdivisions approved, then they get built, the final plats get done, the subdivision gets built, and now they're selling right now in South Nampa. So these are just the approvals. Okay, so here's the preliminary plats, and it's hard to guess how many years out preliminary plats are for construction. It is really difficult. Sometimes we can go 15 years before we see any construction on a preliminary plat. Sometimes we see 7 years, and sometimes we see it within a couple of years. But it's important to remember that when we approve preliminary plats, it's going to be some time before you start seeing construction, and even more time before you start filling all of those units up. So those are the locations of those preliminary plats. And the numbers, you can see there at the bottom, 718 single-family and 384 multifamily units. Again, several years out. Short plats, pretty small numbers there. Here's the big growth you've seen, and these are gonna be coming, you're gonna see a lot of construction on these, or are seeing that construction right now. So these are the final plats. And the total number of final plat, single-family units is 1,326, and multifamily units is 88. Okay, so how are subdivisions changing? This is a really interesting analysis. I was kind of surprised by this, but maybe I shouldn't have been. But the approved subdivisions have more open space and amenities. That's because City Council and this body has recommended more open space. The approved subdivisions have more parking. That's primarily a result of City Council wanting enough parking in all these developments, more parking than we've required in the past. The approved subdivision densities are lower than any time in Nampa's known history. And I'll get into the details there. This graph shows the average gross density per year. A typical single-family residential subdivision will have an average density somewhere between 3 and 4. For the first time in the 10-year history, the annual average gross density dropped below 3 dwelling units per acre. This means developments in the city of Nampa are becoming less dense than past developments, using up more land for the same number of units. This trend is in conflict with the vision identified in the comprehensive plan to promote smart growth and preserve agricultural land through greater density. Large lot subdivisions are one of the greatest threats to the loss of agricultural land. Maintaining a higher density overall will preserve greater amounts of agricultural land. In late 2021, the City Council adopted a code change to encourage more density, but also adopted greater open space requirements. For residential entitlements, council may need to allow smaller lot sizes to offset the required open space in order to achieve the stated density goal. A trade-off to allow smaller lot sizes with the requirement to provide greater open space will likely also help to better preserve agricultural lands. Any questions about that one? I think this is a really key point for us. If we require more open space, but the lots don't get smaller, we're using up more space. That's pretty simple math. The data for this table was provided by the Ada County Assessor's Office. It shows that Garden City has the greatest number of multifamily units per capita in Ada County, 126 per every 1,000 residents, with Boise close behind at 120, and our closest Ada County neighbor, Meridian, has the 59, I think it's 59.77, almost 60 multifamily dwelling units per 1,000 residents. So this is Canyon County. There's less data than in Ada County. They just don't gather the same amount of data as Ada County does. But we're improving this. We didn't have as much, we didn't have this amount of detail last year. We're getting better. So why do we have such a high multifamily units per 1,000 population compared to our closest neighbor of Meridian? There's a couple of scenarios that I have thought through and worked with my staff to come up with some suggestions. It's not definite in any way, but here are some thoughts. First, as an older community than Meridian, Nampa has gone through more cycles of development where single-family detached were constructed and then multifamily units were in higher demand. Meridian's growth has been dramatic and more recent. This growth in Meridian has primarily been in single-family detached housing, though recent trends have placed greater demand on multifamily. Second, the data for certificates of occupancy lags behind approvals of development. A unit would not appear in the tables above, on this screen until they have been constructed, met final inspection, and received a certificate of occupancy. On the other hand, platting of subdivisions may show in our reports several years before those units appear on the tables. Since density has decreased dramatically for approved subdivisions, we will likely not see that decrease in units per capita for several years. Though census data is still not available, this is the third point, we don't have the data available for 2022. It appears that the demographics of Nampa's population may also be impacted by the recent immigration of residents from other states. It may be that the household average age is increasing and the household size is decreasing. This may lead to new housing units being constructed, but the population rate not increasing by the same rate as in the past, meaning that the units per capita will increase even if the number of units built per household remains the same. And finally, out-migration for jobs is still more than the in-migration to Nampa. Though Ada County still is providing large numbers of jobs, Nampa has provided affordable housing for many years for those people working in Ada County. So you might see the demand for multifamily where it's cheaper and they can go into Ada County and work, but they come out to Nampa to live. So this is my final chart. A permit goes through a process of being approved, a permit is issued, and once all inspections are passed, the permit is complete. So that's what this shows here. This graph shows the number of building permits that were completed per year for multifamily units. We saw a drop in 2021 from the 2020 record high number of units receiving a certificate of occupancy, and then an increase again in 2022. The numbers in the past 3 years are significantly higher than previous years. And again, you can see what we were talking about earlier, that dramatic increase in just the last 3 years. You can see that on this chart for multifamily, especially. It has increased from below 50 in 2018, and then 144 in 2019 to now we're at 419 in 2022. So dramatic increases of permits, but again, there's that lag. So they've been approved in the past. You're just seeing them start to hit the market today. And so you need to remember that there is that time frame that happens for development, and it doesn't just happen within the next year or two even. So that's all I have.
Rodney?
It's a lot of data.
Rodney, can you go back to the previous slide?
You bet.
It says fourplexes, we had 2,456 versus triplexes and duplexes. Is that because it's more affordable to build a fourplex than it is triplexes? Does this help go into our desire to have affordable housing or not?
I would say that it is. It's an easier build for these fourplexes. Triplex is just a little bit strange because unless you did a three-wheeled or a three-spoked wheel kind of with your development, it's just a little strange. But you can easily do 2 on the bottom and 2 on top, or them each have two levels, and you just 4, one in each corner. So it's just a little easier build, so it's probably, my guess is that it's cheaper. I'm looking at Tom, he's shaking his head. So,
He's nodding his head, shaking his head. Is
oh,
that
sorry,
nodding?
nodding his head. Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, Rodney, quick question.
Yeah.
With your vast knowledge of planning, is there a sweet spot for multifamily housing versus single-family homes in a city the size of Nampa, 109,000? Because I noticed that Boise was right around 10%. Meridian was probably right around 10%.
10%.
If I remember the number.
Is this what you mean, this one?
Yeah, I guess.
There's 120 in
Yeah,
Boise.
Okay, so it's not 10, but is there a sweet spot? Like,
126.
what's a healthy balance?
I don't know. I've been wondering that too, but I do know that we recently had Mike Pena come speak to City Council, and he spoke about a healthy market for multifamily developments. And he said that they start giving incentives for people to move in to multifamily developments at a vacancy rate of about 7. So we're at 2.1 right now. And so he said it's still what he said the market is showing that there's still a high demand for the multifamily units.
There's so much more, but I know we're in the public testimony. You and I just need to sit down and I guess hash through these numbers.
Sure, yeah, be happy to.
They're fascinating.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rodney.
you bet.
Consent agenda, I'd take a motion to approve, or if there's any discussion. We have a few items on there. Seems like the market is driving some single-family extensions of plats, which is not surprising.
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. I've got 6:11, sorry for running a little bit late here.
Rodney's fault.
Yep, it was Rodney's fault, but he gets unlimited time because he's the director. So we're gonna go ahead and start our meeting tonight. We have, looks like 4 items on the agenda, and just wanted to run through some rules, regulations of the planning and zoning meeting. First, we will hear from the applicant. They'll have, Rodney, you sent an email 7 minutes? Is that what the code says, 7?
Correct. The code says 7 minutes for the applicant, 3 minutes for public testimony, and 5 minutes for the rebuttal. And, but the code also gives you authority. Code also gives you authority to change that at the beginning of the hearing.
I think 7, 3, and 5 for rebuttal is good. We'll stick with that. When you come up, just make sure and give us your name and address for the record. We are recording tonight, and we'll go ahead and get started with item number 1, which is a subdivision short plat approval for Northside Logistics Center for TO Engineers representing LDK. Is the applicant here? Come on up.
Hey, Ron, before you start, I probably better accuse myself from the first two.
All right. See you later. Don't leave.
Good evening. My name is Srinivas Nukala, representing LDK Ventures, 3140 Peacekeeper Way, McClellan Park, California. That's the address. The primary reason we wanted to seek a short plat application for this parcel is to be able to relieve one of the buildings that is under construction, the collateral property that we have encompasses the entire parcel. So one of the reasons is to divide it into the parcel that we are building on. And number 2, the reason why we're asking this short plat is to have the ability to sell the building for a potential user. We have seen few recent inquiries through BVAP or City of Nampa, tenants or users looking to purchase a building, independent building. So we just wanted to have the flexibility to cater towards any potential interest from the users or the tenants. So we are requesting the short plat application to subdivide the lot into 3 parcels. Yeah.
Any questions for Srini? Okay, we'll hear from staff. We'll call you if we have any.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I'll make this as brief as possible as it's pretty straightforward. One of the buildings is under construction. As the applicant said, we're just subdividing so they can sell the buildings individually. There's the site plan, the plat going down the drive aisles. Elevation, this did go through design review and was approved for a building permit already. The plat meets the setback requirements. There's no open space requirement. The Parks requires requests a pathway, and that was a condition of the building permit, so that will be constructed. The fire district, engineering had some conditions about correcting the plat, and those will need to be corrected before the plat signature. Forester had a comment that they need to replace a tree species, the crimson sunset maple, so that will need to be corrected, and that's a condition of approval as well. Other than that, we're creating 3 lots. The plat meets the requirements. Conditions of approval are there in the staff report and the potential motion, and I'll stand for any questions.
Parker, quick question. The development agreement that was signed with city council, was there anything in there about subdividing? You know?
No, there's not.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to public testimony. I don't have anybody signed up on the sheet that wants to speak on this item, so I'll just ask, if anyone in the audience wants to speak for, against, or undecided on this proposal? Okay, take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing's closed.
He just is. I don't see no issue with it. I see no issue with it myself.
Yeah, I don't either, so I'll make a motion that we approve the subdivision short plat for North Side Logistics Center subdivision in the IL zoning district for TO Engineers representing LDK Ventures with recommended conditions, and adopt the potential findings in the staff report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the subdivision short plat. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving along to number 2. This one's similar. A subdivision short plat approval for Madison Logistics Center subdivision in an IL zone for TO Engineers representing LDK Ventures.
Srinivas Nukala, representing LDK Ventures, 3140 Peacekeeper Way, McClellan Park, California. Similar to the Northside Logistics Center, we just wanted to subdivide it into 3 parcels. We have 3 separate buildings going on. We're actually finishing up in the next 2 months, construction for all the 3 buildings, and there has been some steady interest for tenants that wants to own the full building by themselves, and we wanted to have the flexibility, so that's the only reason. Like I said, we are finishing up construction, so it doesn't matter for the collateral to the banks and stuff, so. Just.
Any questions for that one? All right. Christie?
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Christy Watkins, Principal Planner for the City of Nampa. So the request before you this evening is for a short plat approval for the Madison Logistics Center at 16677 Madison Road. It contains 3 industrial lots platted around 3 existing industrial structures. So the entire area out there is zoned IL with just a small piece to the north that's still enclaved and under Canyon County jurisdiction. This property was annexed in October of 2021 and has city services provided to it. This is a picture of the elevation of one of the buildings. There's 3 buildings, as we mentioned. All 3 of them have building permits on them. They're shell permits that have been completed, and there are various tenant improvement permits and sign permits that are underway. This is on 19.46 acres, 3 lots. The average lot size is 6.5 acres, and the minimum lot size is 5.9 acres. As far as parking is concerned, each building is 15,000 square feet with approximately 121 parking spaces allotted to each building, with additional truck parking on the west side. So in that respect, we have 2 different calculations that we look at for industrial buildings. Depending on what the use is inside of the building, it can either be 1 per 500 square feet or 1 per 1,000 square feet. For these buildings, because they didn't know what the tenants were going to be initially, they averaged them out to one per 950 square feet of gross floor area. So that does provide some flexibility for the future tenants that are in. There's no minimum required lot area in the IL zone. The buildings do meet the setback requirements from the property lines that are proposed. The landscape plan was submitted with the building permit and was approved at that time. So we got correspondence from the building department, the engineering department, and the fire district, all of which talked about the fact that there's already building permits that have been approved. These are, oops, I skip over, these are your conditions of approval, and these are your motions. I will stand for any questions.
Christie, what do they do if, per se, someone wanted to purchase one of these buildings? How does the common area and the landscaping and all of that, who maintains it? Who says, so like, if somebody buys one of the buildings and they don't keep up their, landscaping, or they're not taking care of their building, is there anything in place for that kind of thing? You know anything about it?
Commissioner Garner, I would guess would have to defer back to the owner on that one, or the developer on that one.
Okay. You can do it in rebuttal, don't worry.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to public testimony. I do have 4 of you signed up in the against category, but I think that's for the next hearing. So Janelle and Ron Lanning, you're here for the next hearing, not this one? Okay, and then Emily and Huston Pearson? Same. Okay. So anybody else that would like to speak for, against, or undecided on this proposal? All right, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing. Or no, we want Srini back up here. Yep.
We will have CCNRs that will dictate what the user will need to do, or the future building owner. Like I said, the plan is not to sell right now. It's for us to hold long-term, but in the event there is a user, we just didn't want to not have the flexibility to sell the building. But we will compile a set of CCNRs and rules that will dictate how the common areas will be maintained and stuff. But there is pretty minimal common areas in the layout, and yeah. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing's closed.
Another one was pretty simple.
Just say no to this one, just to confuse you.
Smart to have the option.
I'll make a motion to approve the subdivision short plat approval of Madison Logistics Center subdivision in IL zoning district for TO Engineers, representing LDK Ventures with recommended conditions, and adopt the potential findings in the staff report.
It's been moved and seconded to approve subdivision short plat for Madison Logistics Center. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Moving right along, item 3, do we need to open, or do we need to continue this one, or is it continued on, per the agenda? We do? Okay. So,
I think you just need to read the
okay.
wording and then open the public hearing and then continue.
Third item on the agenda is the annexation and zoning to RS6 zoning district and potential development agreement at 0 and 4101 Alma Lane. Subdivision preliminary plat for Brookhaven subdivision at 4101 Alma Lane. All land located in the southeast corner of section 12 for Patrick Connor, Providence Properties, representing James Smith. So we will go ahead and open the public hearing on that.
Then we make a motion?
Yep, and I'll take a motion to continue this item to March 28th.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to continue item number 3 to the meeting on March 28th, 2023. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That's continued. All right, item number 4 is a conditional use permit for multiple family development in a BC zoning district on 10 acres at 11364 West Karcher Road, and potential development agreement for the Karcher Ranch Residences Development for Kelly Kitchens representing Ron Platt. Original concept mixed-use development with 1 commercial building and 192 dwelling units in 9 apartment buildings. Is the applicant here? Come on up, state your name and address.
Good evening. Paul Oland with Paradigm Land, 372 South Eagle, number 284, representing the property owner and developer. I think I've got this down to 7 minutes, so I'll
great.
go quick. So first, I just wanted to take a minute to stay on this slide and show you the architecture, because that'll give you a real flavor for the kind of development that we're proposing. Glancy Rockwell is the architect, and they have included a mix of materials and textures. They've also made sure that every single facade on these buildings is articulated, not only the internal roof lines, but also the fronts, to add a little more depth, break up the visual massing a little bit more as well. And of course, we'll have abundant landscaping throughout that'll help to further soften the overall aesthetic. And just as a point of reference, this is the same design team that recently opened the townhomes at the Silo over on State Street. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but that's enjoyed immediate success and high resident satisfaction. There we go. Thank you. Oops. So the site plan, we're on about 10 acres, but once the right-of-way goes to ITD, we'll be at about 8.5 acres. We're flanked by commercial parcels. This one is zoned commercial as well, but we've got commercial on either side of us. And we've got the Country Boys landscaping operation just to our west there, providing a little bit of well, it's a different use. It's a little more intense. Residential buildings on site are 3 stories. Clubhouse is a single story. Leasing office is in the clubhouse. I don't know if I can point with this or not, but at any rate. It's gated, thank you, which will increase security and privacy. And gating these also has the effect of increasing overall quality, long-term quality and land value, which keeps rents higher. About half the site will be landscaped or open space. Amenities will include central rec area there by the clubhouse, a bocce court, picnic pavilions, walking paths, and that also includes a walking path along the drain, the canal along the north side there. That was a request from staff to put in a public pathway there and an easement, so we'll be doing that, of course. Now, as you know, Karcher Road is set up to be significantly widened by ITD here in the next couple of years. They've reviewed our traffic study. We've coordinated extensively with them regarding access. And what's shown on the screen here is what ITD has said would work and be acceptable. So we will be installing a turn lane, kind of a deceleration lane coming into the project there. So that'll be part of the requirements from ITD. Our closest neighbor is directly to the north, about a half a football field away. All others are over 200 feet, and then a number of them to the west are a little more than 350 feet from building to building. From buffering, we've got 75 feet of irrigation, sewer, and pedestrian pathway easements along the north edge, providing a good buffer there. To the west, there's no buffering really necessary because, as I mentioned, the Country Boys landscape is already a more intense use there that provides a gap between us and the existing neighborhood. We did have a neighborhood meeting not long ago. A couple folks showed up, including the landscape folks next door who live on site. And all they asked for was that we plant some extra trees and put up a fence along our western edge to provide a little bit of visual screening for, I guess that'll benefit both. So just kind of backing out a little bit regionally. So the red blob on here generally represents employment and commercial areas. As you know, yellow dotted circles are interchanges. So this project obviously has great access to goods and services and transportation. And I guess just kind of following up on Rodney's comment earlier, this is not rural land. This is infill, this is commercially zoned. So developing at an appropriately strong density helps curb sprawl and preserves ag land further out. So would this be an appropriate development on the west side of this map? Probably not. but is this appropriate at this location? Absolutely. And then the comp plan, Nampa's comp plan actually shows the land around us either as medium density or mixed use, and talks about infill development being prioritized and greater intensities being located along major thoroughfares. So again, that's really describing this property. So as you know, the CUP, there's 3 criteria that we need to meet in order to gain approval here. The first one here has to really to do with compatibility with surrounding uses. As I mentioned, I know these were in your packet, but just for the benefit of anybody listening, I'll run through them real quick. Already zoned commercial with a wide range of existing uses that are arguably more intense than this. Car wash, convenience store, gas station, et cetera, they're on the screen. This will be a softer use and more appropriate for the residences that are around it. We are located on that future 4-lane divided highway, again flanked by commercial zones and the landscape yard and a buffer along the north edge there. Second approval criteria really has to do with providing a convenient and functional living environment and be as attractive as it should be. Again, a density is appropriate along State Highway. Future residents will have direct, convenient access to regional roadway infrastructure, as Karcher Road shows. Also easy access to goods and services nearby. Third criteria really has to do with whether we enhance the operation of the surrounding area. This will be another housing option to help meet that demand that Rodney was mentioning. Very low vacancy rates. There is continued demand, and it's expected to continue. There is, of course, a tie between the deficit, which pushes housing prices up, which often leads to local employee shortages because it's harder for folks to live and work here. That actually increases the number of vehicle miles on the trips and increases congestion. So a couple $1 million in impact fees, you can see those on there. And of course, we've got a lot of employment coming to the area, and that's just, what that means is that there's even more people who are gonna wanna live and work in Nampa. So in closing, just to kind of wrap this up, this is in direct response to demand. It is expected to continue given the very low vacancy rates and the trend nationally and regionally. Infill talks about, we're very close to a lot of employers. We're also very close to the interstate, which is really key for multifamily. It's efficient, and it's using that infrastructure. It's using the significant investment in Karcher, which is tax money after all. So we should make good use of it. Thank you. I'll answer any questions you might have.
I have a question for you, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
Under public interest, it says the applicant indicated that a neighbor has requested that the development install an 8-foot tall vinyl fence. Did they make them 8 foot tall, or is it 6 foot plus 2 foot, or how do they do 8? Is it a solid unit?
We were thinking fence or wall. We weren't sure. I understand that 6 feet or 8 feet requires a different permit than a 6-foot fence, and this is along the landscape. That's what they asked for. So we're okay with either. We'll push for an 8-foot fence.
I'm just asking, what does it look like? I've just never seen one that's 8 foot.
I'm sorry.
Do they come solid 8 foot?
Well, we can build a fence as tall as we want. 6 is kind of
Well,
standard,
you're
but
not making the vinyl. Somebody else is making the vinyl, aren't you? Aren't they?
yeah, somebody else making them. We can order them 8 feet.
Okay, that was my question. You can
I'm
get them
sorry.
8 foot tall.
Yes, sir.
I didn't want something that looked like it's patched together.
Oh, no, I understand, sorry.
That was it. Thank you.
Any else, other questions? Okay, we'll move to staff report. Rodney.
Okay, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, for the record, Rodney Ashby, Director. I first want to just start off, I'm not going to read what's on your screen there, but here's the general location. He's already done a good job of pointing out where this is at. And I just want to start with saying that on these projects, staff analyzes it in comparison to our existing plans and our city code. So what we are responsible for is to look at those to see if it's compliant and not to put in our own opinion about it. And it comes down for you to analyze it according to those three criterion that are in the code for analyzing, and that's already been highlighted. So I just wanted to point that out. This is analysis done according to our code and our plans, not a personal perspective. So the comp plan you can see here is commercial. The zoning is the BC zoning. So to the north is Canyon County single-family residences. That's the Karcher Acres subdivision. That's we had a lot of the concerned citizens for the, remind me what's called again, the other development,
Northwest Village.
Northwest Village. We had a lot of these residents come in opposition to the project just to the east over here recently. And so you're going to hear some of those same arguments that were used. And City Council did deny that. That was recommended by a split vote by this commission. And then it was denied by City Council by a split vote decision. To the south is BC, it's Sunnyvale subdivision, commercial lots fronting Karcher. To the east is Treasure Valley Apartments. Pre-application occurred in December of 2021, but nothing beyond that, but it is BC zoning. And then to the west is the BC zoning and Country Boys Landscaping business. Just a quick history, November 2000 is when the annexation and zoning to BC occurred. Here's an aerial view of each of those. Here's the landscape business, the consideration for a future development here, and then the existing county subdivision. All right, so here's your criteria for whether you should approve this or not. And I just find the first two that the materials support these criterion. And the last one, there's a lot of flexibility that you have, whether it's appropriate for this location and time. You have a lot of flexibility. But just based upon the analysis that was completed, utilizing the conclusions of law, the NAMPA comprehensive plan and the code, coupled with the findings and conditions listed in the staff report, the project appears to meet all of this and can reasonably be recommended to the commission that it be approved. So these are the applicable regulations. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. This is all in your staff report, of course, but again, just a couple of quick notes. That this was already mentioned in our code. It says that fences are not to exceed 6 feet when it's for multifamily residential projects. Were you able to confirm?
You actually have it highlighted up there, 8 feet in height, 6 feet for multiple family.
Yeah, okay. We were just seeing if anything had changed just recently in the code, but this is the standard right now. So it would only be allowed to be 6 feet for the multifamily project.
Why is that? Why is that in there?
Because it's intended to be a residential feel where it's not kind of boxed in. However, when I say that, there is some options for if a commercial business in the vicinity were to pull the fence permit, they could get an 8-foot fence. So, all right, and then a couple of other notes is that buildings, any multifamily development with buildings exceeding 30 feet shall provide some kind of commercial development along the frontages of these roadways that are mentioned in code, including this one, Karcher. And so an alternative is that it can have a standalone, rather than on the bottom floor, it can have a standalone commercial building, and that's what they've done. So these are your typical requirements. These are all in your packet. The parking requirements, I wasn't sure. I started counting all the parking and realized I don't know how many of these are 1 bedroom versus 2 bedrooms, so I'm not going to go through that process. But there was significant amount of parking. Design Review Committee approval is required for this one, and they are required to give 5% of recreational open space. So here's that site plan that they showed and the elevation. So correspondence, Nampa Building Department submitted their standard comments. Compass, they provided a full staff report, and I just direct you to your packet, that's in there. But one area of concern was the category for convenience, indicating that the project was not within a half mile of a public school or park. So that was the one area that I felt like they didn't quite meet all their criteria for a strong report. Compass also highlighted the transportation project that ITD is going to be doing, construction in 2024, as highlighted on your screen there, between Farmway and Middleton. And that's going to expand the roadway with a center median. Nampa engineering comments are highlighted here, and they're in your packet as well. Essentially, there's services, there's capacity in those services. They did highlight, though, number 5, that a traffic impact study is currently in review by both ITD and the City of Nampa, and whatever is found to be needed by that traffic impact study will be required as part of this development. And I think the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. Here are their recommended conditions. I put them in the recommended conditions from staff. The fire district talked about their emergency response time, and as you can see, this is 1.3 miles from Nampa Fire Station 4 with an approximate response time of 5 minutes, and that's pretty good for them. They also identified the need for additional firefighter positions as growth occurs. This, just want to jump back to what we talked about before the public hearing started. Plats and developments that get approved will take some time to develop out and get residents in them. And in that process, in that time frame, there is a time for these agencies to request additional funding to get their firefighters or police officers or whatever. So that happens on an annual basis and is not a decision you can make to require that of City Council to approve more police officers or firefighters. In fact, the fire department is its own district now, so they are analyzing these and making their own requests to their board. There are the general requirements that are in your packet. Their recommended conditions. Police department kind of already spoken to this already, but they're just pointing out here the need for additional officers because of growth over time. And that happens on an annual basis. I asked them today what the number of officers that were approved in the last couple of years. So in 2021, City Council approved 8 additional officers, and in 2022, they approved 2 additional officers. Valley View School District. This one's a little bit harder one because we know that they're struggling with the number of students in their school districts and in their schools. They've indicated they do not have capacity. They're over capacity, and requested or suggested in this last bullet point that the bond, that if it passes, will certainly help this condition. Again, it takes time for things to develop, so not sure how to handle this, and especially since our attorney has suggested that we don't use this as the primary criteria for evaluating a project for whether it should be approved or not. It can be in the mix. It goes back to those 3 criteria that are for conditional use permits. Okay, and I had several comments, but most of the comments were actually submitted late, so I didn't get to do a full analysis, and they were not in your packet. There were additional comments that were on your desk today that we received today. Karen sent out the other ones to you yesterday, and I tried to just glance through them and make sure that I covered the main topics at the bottom there. So Lorraine, and I'm not going to say that name because I'm sorry, I would butcher it. Knigge, okay, thank you. And they identified concerns about traffic, access, concerns about the location of the Elijah Drain and potential for children to drown there. They also suggested that this development is incompatible with existing single-family homes in the area. Joshua Beefus, okay, thank you, on Hall Drive, also had concerns about the number of units, the height of the buildings, and the privacy that would be lost on his property, the traffic concerns on Karcher, and the impact on Karcher Acres County subdivision. And then the late comments, I just highlighted the high points here: concerns over school overcrowding, concerns over traffic congestion, a desire to first have infrastructure installed before projects are approved, concerns over developer greed, and I didn't know how to say this, so I just put it down how they worded it, raping of the land. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but if they're here, maybe they can clarify that. Belief that Nampa growth is happening too fast, the desire to keep Nampa a rural country feel, a desire to stop growth, and belief that the demand for apartments is not present. And then again, those comments you've got at your desk. So just a quick analysis here of land uses. Sorry, I have some notes here. Okay, so land uses in the area consist of convenience stores, medical facilities, storage facilities, religious facilities, future commercial development, and medium density and low density single-family residential properties. I just wanted to highlight this property here is the one we're talking about, and just a short distance away. This one hasn't been developed yet, but on December 13th, 2022, then the Nampa Planning and Zoning Commission approved a preliminary plat for the Sunnyvale East subdivision, and that's for the RMH zoning district there. This project will construct 9 24-plex buildings amounting to 216 dwelling units, 22 4-plex buildings, that's 88 units, and 1 assisted living building, that's 80 units, totaling 384 dwelling units. And that's all in the red there. This is a concept plan that they've submitted, or excuse me, their plat they submitted. Okay, so comprehensive plan. I told you I analyzed the comprehensive plan, and this land use could, I just highlighted one point here. This land use could also be designed to act as a transitional buffer between other more intense non-residential uses and high-density residential uses. A lot of people think that that multifamily is going to be a really dramatic increase in traffic, and that is true compared to single family, but a commercial use, as you've heard before, will often be much more of an impact on traffic. It doesn't feel like that should be the case, but it is. The one areas that I would point out that's a little bit of a challenge to that argument is that they're primarily during the peak hours, and that's when people are most concerned about the traffic oftentimes. Okay, so public interest. You may consider this a public interest in that there are housing needs in our community. We've already pointed that out. It provides some options for housing. Concerns about traffic. ITD proposed the improvements in 2024 that will help alleviate that. Development is held responsible for their impact on the system, but they can't fix a problem that already exists. We can't charge them or require that they fix a problem that exists in this location already. Utilities, there is capacity for the utilities in this area and no concerns there. The school district capacity, as you've heard, that's a concern still. Emergency services, I think I've covered all of that. And then the 8-foot vinyl fence, I've covered that as well. So staff recommends that amenities the commission wishes to be required be included in the conditions of approval. They listed several of their amenities, but they didn't put it as a definite. I mean, there's no way to hold them to what they're stating is what they're going to provide unless we put that as a condition in the motion, if you choose.
The way I read this now, the potential amenities, we don't, it's not amenities are potential, they're going to be required.
Yeah, so that's the point I'm making, is that you need to put that into your
Well, and
motion.
You guys worded it wrong, actually, because it shouldn't say potential amenities, it should be amenities possibly including the bocce court and so forth. But you're making it sound like amenities are maybe possible or maybe not possible.
So amenities are required, but the type of amenities that they provide is there's a list of a lot of things that they can do. So if you say they need to provide a pool and a pavilion and a
Rifle
park
range.
area or whatever, yeah, whatever it is, then you need to put that as part of your condition, so that we can hold them accountable to that when we see their permits come in.
But on that example, like a rifle range, obviously wouldn't be allowed by city
Correct.
code. But,
Yeah.
so it has to be things that the city would allow in the first place.
That's correct.
Is there anything that they do not allow? I mean, like pools?
I mean, the things that they have recommended are all fine. Yeah. And then the commercial land uses, I've already talked about that, I think. Here are the proposed conditions, there's just a list of all those things. I highlighted number 21 is that you need to add that if you want to hold them accountable to the amenities you want to see there. Here's the proposed findings. I'm not going to go through these. They are in your packet. I think there is a lot of support for these findings. And I'm happy to cover them if you want me to, but I'm going to skip over this except to acknowledge that they are there for each of those 3 criteria. And then the proposed findings for denial. If you find that this doesn't match those 3 criteria, all you have to do is you have to find one of those criteria is not met. So in this situation, I suggested 2 potentials for you to consider if you were to choose to not approve this and choose to deny it instead.
Rodney,
Yes.
not meaning to beat a dead horse here, but under the amenities, it says clubhouse. You could build a clubhouse with put nothing in it, or do you have to say clubhouse with a gym, pool tables, a restaurant, whatever? Do we have to identify what goes in the clubhouse, or?
No, no, you don't have to do anything. I'm just suggesting that if you have a specific thing that they've or that they've recommended or proposed, that you want to make sure that gets done there, that you put it into the motion. I don't think they're gonna build a clubhouse and not put anything in it, so.
I can show you a subdivision that was built, not here in Idaho, where I used to live. They built a clubhouse. Nothing was in it.
And that could be, yeah, it could be a gathering place for parties or whatever it is,
It was
but,
just a vacant space, and nothing ever got used until the citizens that lived there, the homeowners, decided to spend their money to put something in there. So it was just wordsmithing. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we built a clubhouse.
so, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I think that's up to you. Whatever you want to state in your motion, that's fair to do. If you want to make sure that they put something specific in that clubhouse or in their park area or whatever, that's up to you to decide. And then here are some potential motions for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, Rodney, I got a couple of questions. The timeline for Highway 55, when was that again? The expansion or widening of?
2024.
Okay, so it's just around the corner.
It'll take a year.
The attorney, so the city attorney's comment regarding schools and the decision, so on, do you know what the reasoning was behind that?
Do you mean why he gave that answer?
Yeah, you had mentioned that not to use that as the sole criteria, which I understand that, but why the reason behind that? Do you know? Or did he give a reason for that
Because
opinion?
like, how did it come about, essentially?
Yeah, I guess so. I think we're on the same track.
From other projects that have been denied based on comments from the school district as the primary reason for denying them in the past.
Which is what I had said at 2 meetings back or so. I had denied an application because of the comments made by Valley View School District, and that's when you went to the attorney, and the attorney said, that's beyond our capability.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I just want to make sure this is clear, because you can use that to support your decision, whether deny or for. You can use that in your evaluation, but it can't be the sole reason for it. We don't have authority over bonds and about providing services to students.
That's what I was getting to right there.
That was like a special sessions when the city attorney came in.
Correct,
We talked
yeah.
specifically about that issue when we started getting those letters from Valley View and other districts.
Yeah,
When they're a different taxing district also. And
exactly.
That plays into it quite a bit.
Yep.
Rodney, would it be fair to say that you could use that as tying it to one of the conclusions of law?
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
overcrowding of schools would mean that one of the conclusions of law is not met, basically,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, that's the right way to do it. Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we'll move to public testimony. Again, remind you have 3 minutes to come up and say what you need to say, and make sure and state your name and address so we get it on record. We're going to start applicants for the proposal. I don't have any signed up. Any against? I've got Robert Au. Was it? Au, all right. Got it.
Thank you. My name is Robert Au. I live at 16141 Kootenai Place in Nampa. It's about maybe 500-600 yards from where this place is going to be constructed. And falling back on what Rodney said, here we are again. This is second time for me in a month and fourth time in 2 years standing here trying to express my disapproval of another high-density housing project adjacent to or in my neighborhood. As has been pointed out, the roads can't handle the traffic that's already there. Valley View is overcrowded already, and there's 384 units on the way just across the street here. Every time one of these things comes online, the people that live here, things just get worse for them, us already. I feel like we need to put this stuff on hold, not move forward until we have the infrastructure in place to support it. More money for the schools, more money for the roads, whatever, instead of following along after the fact. Well, we got people like Stephanie live on Middleton Road during peak hours. She can't get out of her driveway, period. Can't do it. Anyway, that's all I got to say tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Soraya Tanner.
I'm Soraya Tanner, 11294 Hall Drive in Nampa. The biggest problem I see with this is obviously school levies. For me, that feels like the biggest problem. I'm a school teacher. I teach in Caldwell, so I don't teach in the Nampa or the Valley View School District, but my kids have attended there. They attended Lakeview. My son, who's now a junior, attended there in first and second grade, and it was crowded back then. We've already got multiple subdivisions coming in and multifamily units. How many of these have, been denied based on traffic and school overcrowding, and what has changed since then, since the last one? Nothing's changed, so it's still the same problems. As a teacher, I know what it feels like. You can't give students proper attention, especially if they're on IEPs, which are individual education plans. You can't give them the guidance they need, the accommodations that they need. So that just becomes a big, big problem when there's too many students. I know Lakeview has had to bus students to another school this year. It was either at the beginning of this year or the end of last year, because they already have too many portables. They don't have enough places to put the kids. Obviously, traffic, that's no secret, that Karcher Road is already overused. I am aware, that obviously, that the construction is planned, but will it be enough to compensate for the multiple multifamily units that are being planned, plus the other single-family projects that are in the area? And like I said, this is, the third or fourth hearing for a project like this, and what's changed? Nothing's changed yet. So it's not improved, so why would this be any different? And then not trying to use scare tactics. I'm just gonna relate my own experiences. I was raised in apartments pretty much my whole life. They look nice when they're first built. They're beautiful, landscaped, wonderful. But then they get run down. 20 to 30 years down the road, they get run down. They're not being managed by the same people. It switches management. As a child, I was surrounded by drugs. I was exposed to pornography because of where I lived. I watched physical fights between adults. Our tires were slashed. We had break-ins in our car and in our apartment. I also teach students in Caldwell, and most of them live in apartments. And they are constantly telling me things that they've heard or seen. They're exposed to domestic violence, feuding families that can't get along and they fight with each other, drugs, etc. So it may not stay this way, but I feel like that's where most apartment buildings, they end up. So I know housing is definitely needed. I know there's a housing problem in Nampa, and I feel like this is a good idea, but a bad location. So one of the questions I had was, what is the commercial building that is being proposed on that? And then has there been a conclusion from the traffic impact study? It sounded like there was, but then when Rodney was talking, it sounded like there wasn't. So I'm not sure what the answer to that is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Wendell Tanner next. You signed up in opposition, but said you did not wish to speak. Okay. Terry Kane. Same, in opposition, don't wish to speak. I concur with the opponents. Okay. That's Robert Au again, but you don't get another 3 minutes, sorry. Only took a minute, though.
Try.
Next, I've got Michael Andreessen.
Yes, sir.
Signed up and says you do wish to speak. Come on up.
I do wish to speak.
Come on up, sir.
Thank you. Just want to say that I am the closest.
We need your name and address for the
Thank
record,
you.
please. Yeah.
I apologize. Michael Andreessen. I live at 11341 Hall Drive. And I am neighbors to Josh and Leah Beefus. They had a lot of the same concerns that I have. So I agree with everything that has been said as far as not approving this being built. Just something to think about here. So you improve the highway. That's right there. Do you think there's going to be more traffic once that highway's improved? Okay, you know there's going to be more traffic. It's coming. We've got a huge building project that's going to happen at Micron. You've got Facebook possibly being built. That's going to bring in a lot of traffic on that freeway. That comes from California. It's not going to get any less. How do you reason through this and say, this is a good location for an apartment complex? I don't care if you build a better freeway, a better highway, you've now increased the amount of traffic. How is that even going to be better than what we're facing right now? We live on the Elijah Drain. We've got children that run through there all the time. We watch them from our backyard. They are heading over to other places where people live. Of course they are. The potential to get into that drain and drown you're not going to hold anybody back with a fence. Those kids want to get in there, they're going to get in there. Now you've increased the potential. That is a worse location to build apartments than the other one that we've already shot down that you folks agreed to when you split the difference. It doesn't take much common sense to figure this out. It was zoned for commercial use. Let's leave it right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Andreessen signed up in opposition. Don't wish to speak, or would you like to speak?
Can I give 5 minutes to Stephanie Peters? I didn't get to sign up yet.
That's okay. Yeah, we'll call you anybody else that wants to speak later. Yep. And this is the one that was on the other sheet. So Janelle Lanning.
Hello, my name is Janelle Lanning, and I live at 11431 Hall Drive, just a couple doors down from my neighbors. I wasn't planning on speaking, but thank you for giving me the opportunity. So I've been taking notes and trying to formulate my thoughts clearly. So we live, I think we live at the closest part to the Elijah Drain. It's the narrowest spot as it comes through and runs back behind my neighbors. We do have children that I have shooed away from playing down behind my house. We have no trespassing signs. Doesn't help. I've now been noticing people walking more on the other side of the Elijah Drain, which I get it. It's going to be a nice place to walk, but it's right at my back door, literally. Also, we are zoned for livestock. I have horses. We have kids and whatnot that's our backyard. And here you want to put up multiple 3-story apartment buildings, which I also am concerned that it's going to drop my property value for my home. Then we have crime, which has been commented on, but now you have pollution. You have more people coming and going back there. They commented that they wanted to do a walking path. I get it, but is it really prudent? Yes, you can put a fence up there, but they're going to want the fence not on the side of the Elijah Drain, because they're going to want to see it. They're going to want to be able to walk along that. Again, things that need to be taken into consideration with that. Then the part about the traffic. So I watch at multiple times during the day that the traffic already at Karcher and Middleton, and as it merges down the road, it bottlenecks at right in front of the spot where you guys are wanting to put the apartment complex. It's not gonna, a turning lane's not gonna fix it. Nobody's gonna be able, they might be able to get out to the right, but they're not gonna be able to get out to the left. And then it's gonna start bottlenecking the traffic that's trying to come and go. I don't know what your solution is for that. I understand putting in an apartment complex would be nice. Gee, maybe 55 plus and older. But why so high? We've got a beautiful view of the Owyhee Mountains out my back door still, even with my big trees. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Ron Lanning. Okay. All right.
Or the Pearsons.
Okay. Got it. But I do have them in opposition. All right. Anybody else that would like to speak against the proposal? Come on up.
So do I get her 3, get 6 minutes? No? It's not like the other hearing? Okay.
Nope.
Did you guys get my PowerPoint? I sent a PowerPoint in.
Did we get a PowerPoint?
Okay, well, when I'm done with this, I will hand it and you guys can share it, okay?
So do you have it printed? Is that,
I have one printed copy that I'm
Okay.
gonna read off of.
all right, and then we can, when you're done, just give it to Karen and she can
Okay.
pass it through.
Because I did send it in. Okay, and then I will just read it off the screen.
The rolly one.
Okay, thanks for trying. Okay, my name is Stephanie Peters. I live at 2609 North Middleton Road. And we were here just not that long ago, like Robert said, and you guys passed this on, but our opinion is we need infrastructure before growth. The people of Nampa are pleading that the city fix the infrastructure before giving the green light on any more high-density housing, apartments, and townhome. That infrastructure doesn't just include roads. And I have a picture here, roads, power lines, school, transportation, and quality of life. As of February 1st, 2023, Nampa Police Department is 8 officers short of what it is funded. Currently, they have 3 of those 8 hired for the March Academy and plan on offering 1 more testing before they try to pick up some more officers. Not sure if we will, says Detective Hale. As you are aware, the candidate pool for hiring police officer across the nation is slim. Pretty much all departments are struggling with this issue. We want to know that we have enough officers to control the gangs and drug dealers that have escalated and infiltrated our neighborhoods, to respond to property crimes and be able to assist us whether it's a stolen catalytic converter, our packages, or someone ran into our car or onto our lawn and into our house. There should be enough officers to be able to take care of these violations that they are not having to send volunteers out. People are discouraged. They're thinking less and less of our police department that put their lives on the line every day for us. You make them look bad. I don't know why you are behind on officers. It's just that they are unavailable. Is the city spending more than they're taking in? If so, that needs to stop. The people of the city of Nampa want to have the confidence that there are enough firefighters to handle multiple crises at one time. For instance, a bombing with hundreds of injuries and collapsed buildings. When our firefighters and EMS are understaffed, they're as dangerous as well as the citizens of this town. Valley View Elementary School. Nampa schools have plenty of room. Nampa schools evidently at this time had plenty of room. But anyway, the school these children would attend is Lake. And those kids, like the lady said, for the last year and a half have been bused over to Central Canyon. They have to get on a bus, go to their school, then they got to get off the bus, get on another bus, go to their school. It's not good. They're not just full, they're over capacity by 75 children, and they have no room for portables as well. Desert Springs and Lakeview are all in the same situation. No room for kids, no room for portables. Other services. We want to be able not to wait 4 to 6 weeks to get an appointment to take our pet to the vet, to find a doctor. I just brought my brother-in-law home, 3% kidney function from Oregon. Take me 8 weeks to get into a primary doctor, somebody that's that ill. That's not right. It's all because our infrastructure is not appropriate for the people you're letting move in here. I'm going to skip these because they're not as important. The mayor says she wants facts, not opinions. Today I gave you facts. Our police department and fire department are understaffed. No immediate solution to keeping our city safe. Valley View School District, elementary schools in this area are over capacity. The traffic is outrageous. We are asking that you put this project on hold until our infrastructure can catch up. After Karcher is completed from Middleton to Farmway, after the projects in progress right now, Sunnyvale and others, no one has any idea what that's going to look like. And it can't be about impact fees. It needs to be about people. I'm putting this back together for you so I can pass it around. Sorry, I thought I was going to get the extra time to be able to go through it all.
It's okay, we'll go through it. Or to Karen, the clerk at the end. Yep.
I'm just curious why my PowerPoint, I got it in before time. Why wasn't it available?
City code, right?
Mr. Chair, this has been a recent thing that the city council has decided to do. They don't allow for PowerPoint presentations from the testimonies that are given. They recently decided that. We have typically followed city council standards in this meeting. So you're welcome to change that because the code doesn't say that, but that's the policy that they have established.
Okay.
I was under the impression that that's a visual aid, and that was my visual aid. So I felt like I got denied it, and I had to cut like half of it short because I'm trying to read and I've got a Larynx problem.
Right, we have the full deal. We can chat about it.
I could make copies if that would help.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes. Anybody else would like to speak against the proposal? Go, come on up.
Before my time starts, can I approach for some handouts to be passed out?
Definitely.
Just one.
Yes, just one. Okay. I'm Cheryl Higley at 11241 South Abbott Downing Way here in Nampa. Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm here tonight because I'm strongly opposed to this development. Even though the location may seem good, the timing is bad due to the fact that per the Valley View School District letter, Lakeview Elementary School is already 200 students over capacity. That was in your packet. Students are currently being bused to Central Canyon, which is also overcrowded, and 2 school bonds failed in 2022, which is likely to occur again when a school bond is on the ballot in May. There is currently no long-term solution to the problem. These school district letters have been ignored in the past, which has resulted in our current predicament. As your colleague, Commissioner Kirkman, who is also on the Nampa School District Board, commented at a recent public hearing, we are incumbent to take these letters into account. Otherwise, why do we even ask for them? We can't just turn a blind eye. I wholeheartedly agree with him. Per Idaho statute, which is what I've had passed out to you, it indicates that the purpose of local land use planning shall be to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the people of the state of Idaho as follows. Item L, says to allow local school districts to participate in the community planning and development process so as to address public school needs and impacts on an ongoing basis. If these letters are ignored, you are setting our teachers up for failure and jeopardizing the education for the current and prospective students. And the problem will continue to only get worse. The density report that Rodney Ashby prepared for 2022 shows a total of 1,125 dwelling units proposed on the plat maps, which are in the Valley View School District alone. You can be sure that many school children will be among the new residents. Mayor Kling has repeatedly said that new growth should pay for itself. Unfortunately, under the current school funding system, it is not. Senate Bill 1060 would allow public schools to be added to the list allowed to use the statutory development impact fee mechanism to fund capital improvements attributable to new growth and development. This bill would provide a much-needed influx of impact fees. Can you pause my time, please?
Sure. You got like 15 seconds.
Well, I feel like it's a distraction that I'm not holding your attention when other things are being passed out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Good point. I wasn't paying attention to you.
See? My point, well taken.
From like 15 seconds or 20?
Well, that's what I would go back at you, at least a minute. I mean, that's how long Karen's been handing it out, so.
A minute?
That's how long you haven't been paying attention.
Oh. You guys.
We'll give
I
you
think 30 seconds
30.
will be
I'll give you
plenty.
30.
Even if I get 30 additional seconds, that will be plenty. Okay, Senate Bill 1060 would provide a much-needed influx of impact fees, which could fund the new schools which are necessitated by the new developments. Until this or another stable funding mechanism is in place, new developments should be denied or at the very least tabled. Tonight, your vote will show where your heart lies. Is it focused on acquiring more money for the city from the developers, or is it focused on the school children who are the hope of our future? I hope and pray that you will vote for the school children and deny this project. Thank you for your consideration.
I have a question for you, please.
Sure.
When I first moved to Idaho, which was 20-something years ago, the schools were funded by the state. The buildings were funded by the state. And now they're under property taxes. What happened there? What?
I am not sure. I just know that we bought our house here in 2018, so I'm a relatively new transplant, so I'm not sure. I just know that the current system isn't working. That's why we're in the predicament we're in.
I agree with 100%, but what we had before was much better. It wasn't relying so much on property taxes, but that's where the problem is. You need to go to the legislature and say to them, get off your high horses and go back to the system we had before where you paid for it throughout the whole state instead of just the people who live in the district.
I agree. I think the current system is flawed, that it's dependent on school bonds being passed, which the current residents don't vote for. Not that they don't care about teachers and school children, it's because they don't think it's right or fair to be paying for new schools that they're carrying the burden for when it's because of all the new development, that it's necessitated. So, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak on this application? Or against, or undecided? Get the applicant back up, please. I saw you taking notes. I've got a bunch too, so if you miss anything, I'll help you out.
Keep me honest, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, I heard a number of things. I think I've got about 1 minute per item here, so I'll just try and rattle through them in no particular order. The walking path along the Elijah Drain, that was actually a requirement from the city, so we're doing that. I'm not sure what the city is thinking in terms of fencing or whatever, but that's on the master paths plan, so we'll be doing that. In terms of building along the Elijah Drain, I mean, there are canals all through the Treasure Valley, so if adjacency to one of those is a criteria for not developing it, then I don't know what to say. In terms of park and amenities, you brought up the question about what exactly we're planning. Well, we're showing the bocce court, the picnic pavilions. Those would include barbecue grills. We're also planning on building a fitness center within the clubhouse and a small dog run somewhere. Things like that. A pool doesn't really work for this size of a project. You need twice as many units because that's an extremely expensive long-term maintenance as well. But those, we'd certainly be happy to agree to that sort of thing. But in addition, the comment about park and amenities, we're providing them on site. Somebody said to not count impact fees, but impact fees are there to lessen the burden, to actually spread the burden out over from the development, ends up does contributing to parks and rec facilities elsewhere. We've also got, I heard, crime. I think your police chief will tell you that apartments actually per capita don't have more crime. It's a density question. It's not that people living in apartments are more criminal than other people. In fact, statistics show nationally that they're slightly less likely to commit violent crimes than people in single-family homes. It's just a matter of density. And density, as Rodney said, is something that is needed, it's in demand, and it's supported by the comprehensive plan. In terms of police and fire, again, that's what impact fees are for. I know it's hard to find applicants nowadays, and there's a whole slew of reasons for that. But this project will be injecting several $100,000 into those efforts, and that's the point. Is for development to pay its way and to contribute to those new officer positions and things like that. And of course, it's not just the one-time impact fees, it's the ongoing property taxes that come in. And multifamily residential typically, or especially high-quality multifamily residential, is a great way to inject a lot of density, which translates into more property taxes because of property values, without the sprawl and without stretching those services even more to cover a much larger area. The question came up about traffic, and I know that February 6th hearing, I know a number of the people who just spoke at that hearing as well in front of City Council to talk about the project to our east. And the number one discussion point at that hearing was traffic and access and timing especially, which I heard again this evening. So we have, as I mentioned, met with ITD on several occasions. We've worked it out with them. They've got our TIS, or our traffic study. They have reviewed it. They've said that the recommendations in it, they agree with them, which is why I mentioned the turn lane, the deceleration lane. They are comfortable with that being the mitigation that's necessary to offset the impacts of this development and make our access point safe. But timing is a more important question, and I get that. So 2024 is when ITD is going to start. 2025 is when they're expected to finish, and that lines up perfectly with our development. We are not getting out in front of infrastructure. Our timing will align with the improvement of Karcher Road, so we won't be injecting a bunch of traffic onto there under existing conditions. So that actually works out really well. You know, more homes equal more services, especially if you can get them close to goods and services. It'll help those commercial areas. It'll help employers. It'll reduce the number of vehicle miles that need to be traveled by people who are moving here because they're already closer to the places that they want to go, rather than locating them 5 miles out and then they got to drive 5 miles more to get their groceries. It's actually infill development. This is how it's supposed to be. We meet the conditional use permit conditions. This is supported by the comp plan, and this is a good location for this proposal. I'd be happy to answer any other questions or if I missed something.
So how are these apartments going to be managed? We had a comment about management of the complex, or
Yes.
experience of somebody that grew up in apartments. And
Sure. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think we've probably all lived in apartments at one point or another. So these will be managed by a professional management company, probably the same one they're using over at the Silo Townhomes on State Street. I don't remember the name of it. Do you remember? Legacy Property Management. So they're a reputable big firm. Yeah, they're on site too. That's important. It's I know that's a big issue. If you just have somebody trying to manage it remotely, that doesn't work as well. So that will not be the case here.
commercial building, where is that on the site plan?
Yes. So it's right next to. Thank you, sir. So it's actually attached to the clubhouse. And one of the things that we've seen nationally, of course, is more work from home. But for a lot of people, working from home isn't quite what they need. They really need an office environment that they can go to. They do most of their work at home still. So what we're proposing here is actually sort of a quasi work from home area. These are going to be office spaces for rent. It's going to be available not only to residents, but anybody else who wants to come rent them, but they'll be able to come in, have some professional office space with some of the infrastructure that comes with that. You can have meetings or, make coffee or make copies. Have a desk there that's not in your living room. But we think this will be a really highly used amenity. I think there'll be a lot of demand just on site, but again, it'll be open to other people in the community as well.
So, sorry, Jeff. There's a couple gates there that get you into the parking of the main area. So I'm seeing, is that 4 parking spots, maybe 1 ADA for the clubhouse and the commercial space?
That's a great question. So people who are renting in that office space will be granted gate access. But the other thing is the gates will be open all day. So they'll just be shut at night anyway.
Oh, okay.
So, and that was actually something that ITD asked about when we were talking to them.
That was going to be my question too.
Yeah, they were worried about possibly backing up. So what we told them is, we'd be happy to adjust the hours for those gates to whatever they're comfortable with. And what they said was, if you can give us 30 or 60 minutes before rush hour in the morning and 30 or 60 minutes after rush hour in the evening, keep it open for that window. That would alleviate their concerns. And most of the folks who might be coming on site to rent some of that office space will probably be in those hours anyway. But again, they'll have credentials to get through the gates after hours.
Any covered parking?
We're not planning on it. We're not planning on it at this point.
There, Mr. Chair, there is a requirement for half of for each unit, one of the parking spaces need to be covered.
We are planning on covered parking. Wasn't aware of that, I'm sorry.
And that's built into the conditions anyway, because it's a requirement.
Well, I'll keep going on traffic. I don't know, this probably isn't a question for you, it's more for Rodney. Like, it's hard for me to just say, well, there's this traffic impact study out there, we can't see it, but there's some recommendations in there and we're sure they'll follow them. It's hard for us to know what those recommendations are. Do we know what they are yet, or?
So the recommendations that come out of the traffic impact study is a westbound right turn lane into the site. The other traffic issues that are identified are background traffic, with a number of them being addressed with the ITD project as it goes in now. There are some others at the intersection of Middleton that are existing condition, and as has been mentioned, existing conditions deficiencies are not something that we can require the development to fix. Those are the city's responsibility to address. And so in this instance, the only mitigation that is recommended is a turn lane, right turn lane. I've reviewed the traffic impact study. While we had a few comments, there's nothing in our comments or the anticipated comments from ITD that would change the results of the study.
So, how are people gonna turn left out of here onto the highway?
So in the ITD, this will be a divided highway, so they will not turn left. They will turn right, they will go down, and they will make a Michigan U-turn before the Middleton exit.
Midland?
No, so as you see, just to the west.
Midway, sorry.
Or to the east of those, there, you will have U-turns through the island. Rodney, if you can. So someone needing to turn left, they will take a right out of there. They will go down, get in the left center lane. They will make a U-turn, and then they will merge back into the eastbound travel.
So before they get to Midway,
Before they get to Midway, there will
Is
be
there
another Michigan
any kind of
U-turn.
light or anything here, or just?
No, so the way that it happens is they make the turn, they start going straight, and there's a portion for them to be able to merge back in.
Kind of like what they're showing here to the east, they're gonna have another one of those to the west.
So Daniel, you didn't design Karcher Road or State Highway 55.
No, that is
That's not our design.
ITD.
That's a state, that's
That
like
is
an
a-
Eagle Road type deal.
Yes.
So they stack up in this left turn lane. When it's clear, they pull around into this
So
little
they
side
would,
track.
they would
and then
pull
can merge
around
back
and
in.
make that U-turn, yes.
Those are called Michigan U-turns?
That's one of that's the way I know them. They're also called loons. There's a few different names for them, but yeah.
What's the technical term?
I don't,
Loons.
You don't know?
Michigan U-turn's the one that ITD originally was calling them. They've started calling them different things, but that's.
Okay.
We may see more of those pop up in the valley.
Okay. More traffic questions, Drew, or are you done?
I'll be done.
Right.
I think, yeah, that's all.
The only other thing I had on my list, it was a comment about diminishing neighborhood property values. And there's a lot of data that supports both sides. So, you know, we've always had the opinion, based on the data that we've seen, that property values do not go down once apartments move in next door. Any comments on that?
No, Chair, I would agree. You know, you can find data on both sides. You can find data to support pretty much anything if you want it. It's kind of like self-storage, where apartments have really morphed a lot over the years. So modern apartments are a lot different than apartments that got built in the 80s. And they tend to retain their value a little more. The group, the plan is to hold on to this just like they are on the State Street one. You know, there's a lot of interest from the ownership, and yeah, I mean, you're incentivized. You're putting tens of millions of dollars into a development, and that's an asset. So what you want to do is maintain the value of that asset so that you can continue to charge good rents, and letting it deteriorate is the worst thing you can do to protect that asset, regardless of who owns it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I just noted a couple more comments that
Okay.
may need to be addressed. Commercial buildings to the south, I think they were asking about those for the subdivision that I mentioned in my slides. I think up here, there's some commercial along Karcher, and those don't have any tenants yet. They're just a part of the development to set aside as parcels for commercial.
That's just land for commercial.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm. And then the second question that I heard from one of those testimonies was asking about the height. Why
Okay.
so high?
Sure. Oh, yeah, I can answer that.
Go ahead.
So basically, it comes down to land value and amenitization. And so when you take the value of the land, or the cost of the land, and we all know that's gone up a lot, coupled with the level of amenitization that you have to put into modern apartments, you have to have a certain number of units to support that. And so 3 stories tends to work pretty well. 4 stories tends to really get awkward with elevators and things like that as well. 3 stories seems to be a sweet spot for apartments, where it's not too high, but you also get the density to support a much nicer project.
Okay. Miss anything else? No?
Thank you.
But one more question. You mentioned your timing lining up with the Karcher improvements. So are you shooting for like the leasing season of 2025 then for completion?
Yes, sir.
For everything?
Yeah,
So
we
you're not
expect.
going to phase it, it's just going to be all 9 buildings hit the market?
I know the first ones are slated for 2025. I don't know the question about whether it would be phased or not.
Okay.
I would imagine the way they would do it is to build enough of them to support the clubhouse and everything, and then start leasing those up, and then have other buildings under construction while those first ones are filling up. But yeah, 2025 is the expected opening.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Move to close the public hearing.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed.
Rod, tell me if this is something we should consider. And I know we talked about this at our last meeting, but can you give us a summary of the findings for city council denying the Northwest Village? Or should we not be talking about that?
It's public record, and it was primarily based on traffic. Christy was the staff there. Is there anything else I should mention besides traffic?
I can't remember right off the top of my head what we talked about. It was, traffic was one of it, timing was another, and the density, the overall density of the project was another.
One of the comments that they made was, it's a great project, just not the right timing. So,
But was there traffic concerns more directed towards the Middleton Road? Yeah, okay.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that was, but we all understand the traffic issues. We're all facing it. We all live in Napa. We all got to deal with them. My problem is telling somebody what they can and cannot do with their piece of property that fits into the comp plan and fits into the zoning. When it fits, we don't get paid, we don't make any money if we approve it or deny it. So we're not in this for anything other than to follow the guidelines that we're giving, which is the comp plan and the code. If it falls in that, it makes it really tough for us to deny it, as far as I'm concerned, because that's what the comp plan's for and that's what the code's for, so, zoning's for. So.
Yeah, there's two things. Does it fit in the comp plan? And then there's is it the right time though, which we do have leeway to.
Which, and like I've said before from the mic during public testimony, it's hard for us to sit up here and we're here every week or every other week. Some of us a lot longer than others as far as years go, but we listen to the public, we listen to your comment, we listen to your concerns and opinions, and I appreciate that, I really do. But what's hard for me personally is to go to different invites that the mayor gives to the public to help shape the city, to help shape that comp plan. And I don't see any of the faces that are here when it concerns specifically your subdivision. And it's just hard for me because I put in a lot of time. I want the city to be great. I've lived here my entire life, literally. And that's why I decided that it was probably a good idea to do something like this, because I wanted to help shape Nampa into something that my kids would want to live in. So it's really hard when I hear and see people once, twice, over a couple little things, but then when I go to, future land use stuff, that the mayor and city council puts things out to the public and says, hey, we'd like you to be part of this. Please come. Please give us your input at those things. Be part of that plan. I don't see faces. It's the same faces that I see every other week and maybe a handful of other business professionals. So it's really hard for me personally because I want the community to be involved, but not just when it impacts your neighborhood, but when it impacts the city. Because that's what it's about, right? It's about what's best for the city, not just what's about best for your neighborhood. So, my thoughts.
What you're saying, without even thinking about it, I see the same thing myself. I mean, I've been doing this probably longer than anybody here, and the people that come and complain don't go to the meetings that are important about the future. They just come to the one that affects them personally. And something needs to change because I put a lot of heart and soul into the decisions that I make. But the citizens seem to narrow it down to just what they personally get out of something or lose from something, Rather than thinking of the whole community as a whole, like we're trying to do, they're trying to just minimize it down to their own personal backyard.
Well, let's give them some more credit than that.
You see them at meetings that I don't see them at? Brett sees them at?
I don't go to the meetings either. Steve. No, I mean, I think that's a fair point, and I agree. No, I'm at the early morning meetings and everything, but this is something we're interested in, and it's natural for us to want to do that stuff. I just think let's consider their arguments and their points that they make based on the merit of the points that they make, not whether or not they show up to as many meetings as we do, although I do agree with you.
One of the things that I noticed when I first opened up the applications and the city report, and I looked at this, and the location is on the, would that be the west side of the street instead of on the east side of the street. Putting it on the west side makes it much harder.
It's on the north side.
Huh?
North side.
North side, okay. So putting it on the north side makes it harder to turn into the city, so they have to go make these
Right.
Michigan turns, or whatever they were called.
You're right.
Huh?
You're right. I get turned around over there too. That's east. Right? Is that east?
Are you talking on which side of Karcher Road it's on?
Yeah,
It's on the north side.
okay.
We know where it's at, 'cause we're looking at a picture there.
Right there.
There's the direction arrow on the bottom right there.
Up of the map's north.
Got it.
So what, my first impression was, it's on the wrong side of Karcher. It should have been on the south side of Karcher instead of on the north side. You wouldn't have all the issues that you have with the traffic and people trying to get in and out, because they'd be going into town mostly. They're not gonna go to Nevada or someplace down Karcher Road. They're gonna go to Nampa or to Boise or to Caldwell. So that was my first impression, was it's on the wrong side of the street.
Well, that's the parcel they own. So.
Well, there's lots of parcels on the other side of the street, too.
We already approved that one.
They're already being developed. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, I don't know.
This is tough. I have a couple of comments. One comment was made about, it almost was an assumption that when letters are submitted, that we just ignore them. And I can guarantee, at least for me, they are never ignored. I read all those letters, but here's the thing, just because we don't agree with what your letter might say, does not mean that we are ignoring it. So I think that's a really important point, because a lot of people do think that, hey, you didn't agree with what I submitted, therefore you are ignoring me. That's not the case. I'm not speaking for the other commissioners, but I'm pretty sure that you probably feel the same way. Looking at this statute that was provided in, and I apologize, I forget your name, but the Idaho statute, the first thing in this list, and I don't know if these are in order or not, but the first thing in this list is to protect property rights while making accommodations for the necessary types of development. And we go through this whole list. This is a difficult decision for me, and I'm looking at the 3 criteria for a CUP. And, are we at a CUP?
Yep.
Okay, I can't forget, we've been on this for a while. And this is where it really comes down, because we do have a lot of, there's some flexibility with this commission when it comes to that. So I think sometimes, I feel like, when I make decisions, sometimes those decisions are defaulted to statute, to code, so on, and the things that we have to or can't. But there's a lot of flexibility. So here's the first one that I struggle with. The location, size, design, and operating characteristics of the project will not adversely affect the livability or appropriate development of abutting properties in the surrounding neighborhood. And here's the other point too, with consideration to be given to the availability of public facilities and utilities to the harmful effect on the neighborhood character. This is the one I really struggle with, because I do believe that a project this size is going to impact this area in a negative way. When you're talking about the livability, that to me, and this is where I have some discretion in my thought process and decision, the livability does include the traffic, it does include surrounding neighborhoods. It does include the schools, not solely, but it is part of that, it is part of that discussion. And so all of that together, on this particular one, I would say no to this project based on that particular condition. So the next one is the location, design, and site planning. I think this is a great location, given the proximity to the interstate, given the proximity to the commercial that's already there, given the proximity that this is on a state highway. And we knew at some point, whether you lived here for 50 years or whether you've lived here for 2 years, that's a state highway. That's designated by the state as to be a major thoroughfare through the state. Okay, so any development on that is going to have traffic. I appreciate the fact that ITD is ready to break ground next year. It's better earlier than later. So on B, I would say yes to this project for that particular one. C is that the project will enhance the successful operation of the surrounding area in its basic community functions or will provide an essential service to the community or region. This is the hardest one for me. Because when I look at basic community functions, we are talking about all of this stuff. We're talking about the schools. We're talking about the impact on the schools. And we can't forget that. But we don't have any control over whether the districts are going to be able to pass a bond or not pass a bond or, move kids around or whatever the case. We just don't have any control of that. So I understand the comment from the attorney that we can't base our decision solely on that because of that reason. But there's also operation of the surrounding area. You add this many more to what's already approved to go in this area, and this is where I'm leaning to a no on this particular. So right now, it's like one for yes, one for no, and then one kind of undecided. Sorry, that's my thought process as I kind of hashed it out. But that's all I got. Well, I did have, someone did, this, we hear this all the time. Growth should pay for, development should pay for growth. Man, we hear that all the time. But it was interesting because it caught my ear because a couple of people mentioned that we should have the infrastructure before this is approved, before the growth. Well, that's in 100% contradiction to what everyone keeps saying, that growth should, or development should pay for growth. If this development doesn't come in, we're not getting the money that this development is going to provide to the city for the growth that is going to happen, whether or not this is approved or not. Okay? So infrastructure before growth, I get it, but development must pay for growth, I get it, but those are two contradictory statements, in my opinion.
And the hard part with that is, in order to do the infrastructure, you'd have to raise everybody's taxes so high
Chicken and
that
egg kind of
they couldn't
thing,
afford to
too.
live here anymore.
Tough.
Matt, I can just see the burning in your brain up there.
Matt, help me decide on that last one, see. I'm on the fence.
Here's my thoughts, and I appreciate the public testimony, but we have a representation of a very small group of people, right, in your one neighborhood. There's another neighborhood right on the other side of that Country Boys landscape, and we don't have anybody here from that I know of. Somebody might be, but I don't think so. And I think if these individuals didn't come out here tonight, how would you vote? Right? Because on the merits, I see the merits of this project. And everybody doesn't want multifamily in their backyard. But can you find a better location for this type of development? It's right near all the services. It's near grocery stores. It's near entertainment. It's near restaurants. All of the stuff that you want to put that, because that puts less traffic on the roads, because they don't travel as far to get their goods and services. And so for me, I think if they had not come tonight, I think it probably would have almost been a unanimous yes. Because there is merit with this project. And so, for me, and the question comes, livability. Who wants to define it? right? I mean, because the woman that says, I can see the Owyhee Mountains from my backyard, but if these buildings go in, well, I understand that. That's an emotional thing. But does it affect livability? What is livability? And I don't know. And I think that that's going to be different. So for me, I like the project, and it sucks that it's going right in their backyard, but there is a lot of merit to this project.
Come on, Tom.
I already voiced my opinion. And you know, if you look at the dollars that will come in on this, and the city can allocate those dollars where it needs them, most of the stuff that's going to have to be paid for on this project, as far as roads and stuff, is going to be paid by ITD. So we can take those dollars and use them someplace else in the city that we can use them for, that we need them for. And I'm with you. I totally get it. I understand the views are beautiful. Something's going to go in there, and like we've been told many, many times, a business will generate more traffic than the residential will. It's just that the business is all day long. Residential, there's plenty of studies that show that. But you know, ITD is going to pick up the vast majority of the cost of doing anything to the roads right there in front of it. So let's use, you know, and I again, and you know, I'm with these guys as far as the comments that, you know, we attend a lot of the future planning land use maps meetings that take place to help direct how the city is going to grow, what's going to go in what parts, and that's how we know and how developers know where they can and can't do something. So, you know, those are the meetings that help direct the city, and that's where you should spend some time as well, so you can help put your thoughts and ideas down on the paper. So when those maps are adjusted, it's more of what the city wants, instead of just a few people that show up to those all the time. So I just think that, again, I go back to the comp plan and the zoning, and it fits in those. And so I don't really have a big problem with it myself.
One thing I was just thinking is that if this project were not to be approved for this site and it remains BC without a CUP, who knows what could go in there? I mean, I was just looking at this list, a freight transfer point. Is that something you want in your backyard? A sports arena? Hey, that might be kind of cool.
Like
Sports arena. I mean, so there's a lot of different things that could go on this piece of property other than multifamily housing because of where it's zoned now. And it's not just gonna be another Maverick. I think there's one right next door anyways, but it's not gonna be another gas station. It may not be a you know, whatever. It could be a lot of different things.
And I think the scary thing is that if they just did something in that zone, there wouldn't be a public hearing, right? Somebody could just go put whatever they wanted on there and you would have no voice.
Yeah, the only reason we're here is because it's a,
Conditional use.
yeah.
Well, I think that's an important thing to note too. We keep saying that this is following the comp plan and the zoning plan and everything. It's like, well, it's not completely, or else they wouldn't even be here. You know, there's a reason that you need a CUP to do multifamily in a commercial zone. And I think it gives us a chance to say, do we want to turn this commercial into residential? I'm not saying whether we do or not, but I guess it's not a slam dunk for me that this is what it's zoned for. It could be if we want it to be, but and frankly, I think the apartments look nice. I think they're going to be better than some apartments we've seen built in the past. They've got all the amenities and they'll have the upkeep. I frankly wasn't impressed with the commercial aspect of this. The 1,000 square feet divided how many ways? I don't know, but I've said before, I don't love losing commercial space to multifamily because I like having pockets of commercial for reducing traffic and things like that. So I'd like to see I'd like to see it more of a true mixed use where there's some residential, but maybe more commercial than 1,000 square feet tied to the clubhouse. And like was mentioned, I think Tom said that maybe not. The concerns on the last one was more of Middleton Road was the bigger hang-up on the last traffic. And I think it is advantageous that ITD is paying for the improvements on this one. And so I'm still concerned about traffic, but not as much as I was on the last one. Some random thoughts.
How does our newest commissioner feel about it?
Well, Rodney earlier talked about vacancy rates and how apartments don't start offering concessions until they're down to 93%. But anything above 95%, and they're going to keep upping rent because they can, and that's what the market says. And to me, a huge part of livability is being able to afford where you live. And so I think Nampa needs housing, and it's got to go somewhere. There's a lot of reasons why this might not be the best location, and there's a lot of reasons why this might be the best location. I lean in favor of the project with all of its flaws, but I think that the more apartments we can get into high traffic or higher density areas, the better.
Yeah, I don't think these are gonna be affordable.
Well, I'm.
But you're just saying increase the inventory, increase the supplies.
The more supply there is.
Because rents will come down.
And that's the way I feel too. I mean, I think it's a good location. It's just the wrong side of the road. That's the only problem I have with the thing. It's just the wrong side of the road.
The other thing to think of, Drew, is that we've been told over and over again that the commercial is going to follow the people. Where the people are, they'll put the commercial. And so they're not gonna go drop commercial out in the middle of the country, you know, that we need the density in order for it to happen. And as of right now, and I've said it a million times, we've painted ourselves into the corner where everybody has to go to the marketplace to get everything they need, and they, you know, that's the commercial side.
Well, how?
You know,
how
we
much
need more of it in spread out throughout town, but it's not gonna happen unless we put density there.
How much residential are we adding to the south side of the road there, though? And there's a lot of units going in.
Just that one project.
So we've got the residential coming in, let's let the commercial follow.
As long as that's enough.
If we
Is that
fill-
enough?
if we
I don't know.
I don't know.
We've got two.
But if we fill it all up with residential before the commercial can even come in, there's nowhere for it to come in.
We've got commercial paths right across the street.
Yeah, there's commercial right across the street.
Being held unless they come in for CUP, but.
Yeah. Fair enough.
At the point I want to flip a coin.
I'm also concerned about the school with Jeff.
Yeah, I am too. And if I had more confidence in people to ask the bond, I would feel more comfortable making a decision, but
Yeah, but when I was first looking at this, I was thinking, you know, the bond in Valley View, I think, is in May. I was just wondering if the project could just hold off a few months and see if that passed or not.
Maybe campaign for it.
Yeah.
well,
Maybe it'll be
Yeah, I
a
mean, the
whole
last-
different situation.
The last bond failed by like 0.5%.
Yeah, it's
maybe.
pretty close.
It's getting closer. Hopefully it goes, because my kids go to Valley View. Or Ridgeview in the Valley View district. Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, this one goes to city council either way we decide, and,
No.
no, I'm sorry, it doesn't. You're right. You're right.
An appeal might.
Yeah, but we're a land use body, and based on what the project has presented, I think it meets the criteria for CUP. Just all depends on what leeway we want to make for timing and whatnot. So, you know, in my opinion, I think it's a good project, and it's something that's going to benefit the community. So that's where I stand. I probably won't get to vote.
Nope, we got an odd number.
Okay. Who's the odd one?
I can't do directions, but I can do fractions.
well, as Peggy would say, somebody make a motion.
Yep. I said that in a prior meeting, and I got slapped for it, so I'm not saying that anymore.
I will entertain a motion.
Yep.
I got my quota of motions in tonight already, so.
And we will do a roll call for this one, right? Yep.
I move to approve the conditional use permit for a multiple family development in a BC zone district on 10 acres addressed as 11364 West Karcher Road. For the Karcher Ranch Residence Development for Kelly Kitchens representing Ron Platt, with all conditions listed in the staff report, and to adopt the proposed findings of approval as stated in the staff report.
And to include the amenities that he described in his report.
And to include the amenities as presented by the applicant.
So before we go to a roll call, can I just a question on that? Because as he was talking about those amenities.
I think you need to have a second first.
Oh, okay. Someone.
Or we can discuss it. I'll second it.
Okay, so, thanks. I just wanted to make sure, because when he was talking about those, he was very nebulous about what he says, yeah, I think we can do those, or yeah, that might be doable, or something like that. So I just want to make sure that in the motion that maybe we're specific about what.
Which ones they are?
All
What-
right.
here's
Mr.
my-
Chair,
We don't want to plan
Yes.
out their development.
I
Yes.
wrote down them when he said them, so I'm happy to read them, if that would help.
Yeah, read them off just to see if all the bases got covered.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The dog park, gym inside the clubhouse, picnic pavilions with barbecue features, and a bocce ball court.
Where's the dance hall?
Except he mentioned, I don't want to split hairs here, but he mentioned dog run. He didn't say
Dog
dog
run,
park.
not dog
Are we-
park.
Are we talking about
Dog
two different
run?
things here? He said dog run.
I think we're getting too into the weeds here, guys. We're
do you-
trying
Yeah, I
to
don't-
design their
yeah, I don't
development
wanna
for them. I think we got to tell them they need to have some amenities. I don't know. I don't want to.
See, this is,
In my opinion, as a company owns one project, it's in their best interest to have the best amenities.
Yeah.
I think what was mentioned before about the empty building, that was an HOA that probably didn't care about their clubhouse because they sold all the parcels and left, right? So as an apartment complex, you want to have the best amenities to draw in the tenants, that they're gonna maintain those and have the best ones that they find in the market. So I don't think that requiring specific ones is going to.
Right.
I agree. However, this was the first time I've heard staff talk in detail about adding amenities to the motion specifically. And maybe I missed something before all this, but this is the first time I've really heard you, and to the point where you added it in the conditions, make sure you put those amenities in there. So that's the only reason I'm bringing this up, because it was a little odd to me that the discussion from staff was, make sure you add the amenities if you want to do that.
I think since the applicant mentioned those specifically, I think we're safe putting them into the,
I'm fine with it, I just
I
want to
I
make
think
sure we're.
what Rodney wrote down, I think it's fine to put them
Alright,
in
we're
there
good.
because they were proposed in their proposal.
Yeah, I agree.
We need to redo the motion.
Yeah, just modify your motion to include what Rodney listed.
I move to modify my motion to include the amenities listed by Rodney.
Well, I'm sorry, it's been motioned and seconded, so you have to take action on that motion, don't you? Before you make an amendment.
So, Mr. Chair, I think the motion was that the amenities that were presented, and then I just listed them out
Oh, so we're good.
as presented.
We're good. We're
Need a
overthinking.
roll call.
Ready?
Yes.
I think so.
Garner.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Daffer.
Yes.
Turner.
Aye.
Kehoe.
No.
Morgan.
No.
Kirkman.
45% no, 55% yes.
It's a yes.
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 Motion carries.
It's a hard one for me.
Okay, that motion carries. That will go, that is approved, and the CUP will become effective 15 calendar days from the date of this hearing unless an appeal has been filed with the Planning and Zoning Department with the appropriate fee. No action should be taken on the CUP until the appeal period is concluded. The applicant must confirm with Planning and Zoning staff that there have been no appeals. Okay? Thank you. Have a good evening.
think it's Brett Miller. He said that we don't come to the other meetings. We don't live in the city of Nampa. We don't get notices. We live in the county. And that's why that's the only reason he hasn't seen us at the meetings. Because now we got a compass thing in the mail and I filled it out. I passed it on to some other people to fill it out. But that's why you don't see us at the meetings. We have not been invited. I don't take a newspaper.
It's online.
They're advertised on our,
I don't use Instagram.
they're advertised on our website.
Okay, well, but then I would have to go to your, I just subscribed to the website, so maybe now I will get the notices. But most people, like in the, what is it?
Be proactive. Be
Half the
proactive.
people don't even have internet in that subdivision.
Be
Or cell
proactive.
phone.
I don't know what else to say. Be
Well,
proactive.
I just wanted to explain to you, it's not that we don't care or want to be involved,
Okay.
but if we don't know, and the same thing about the Silvercrest Estates, when the notices only go out 300 feet, how are they supposed to know?
We hear you. I mean,
Okay,
that's,
I just
Thank you.
wanted to address that.
okay, thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for serving.
Okay, we have one more item this evening. It's Nampa City Code Text Amendment change. Title,
I thought Christie already went home.
I'm not going to read all this, but it's Doug. Doug is up
Actually, I'll
for
start.
item number 5.
I'll start.
Thank you. Christie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I hope that you took the weekend to read through all of these pages. This is actually a fairly short change compared to some of the ones you've seen in the past. It was only 178 pages long, and not every page had changes on it. So, this shouldn't take very long. I think the biggest part is going to be the first section, which comes from the Parks Department. The reason you're seeing it isn't necessarily part of the planning and zoning chapter. It is part of the overall city code, but the reason you're seeing it is because we helped the Parks Department draft it as we were doing the drought-tolerant landscaping and all of that kind of stuff. So it seemed like it all just kind of flowed together, and they wanted it to follow the same adoption timeline. So that's why you're seeing it. Like I said, I hope that you have read through it. If you have any specific questions about anything, we will certainly entertain that. As you can see on the screen here, all the different chapters that were affected in some way, although some of them were very minimal. The staff report was sent to the city attorney the same day that you all received it, and he commented back on it yesterday with just a few grammatical changes and some questions for the Parks Department, which they have been discussing. All of that will be addressed prior to it going on to city council, but I don't see that his edits were anything substantial that would be different from what you received. So in the tree service chapter for parks, we added a lot of definitions. Does anyone need any clarification on the definitions that we added?
I didn't need clarifications, but I want to thank you for doing this because I think it's going to make it a lot easier for the developers because so many times they put in things that are not healthy to have around. This is a great way of doing it.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have, sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
do have a quick question, maybe for clarification. So on heritage tree, it's probably on the next slide, I don't know. Typically, a large individual tree, blah, 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 blah. And it says a tree may qualify as a heritage tree if it meets one or more of the following criteria. And then it goes through rare species, documented, da, da, da. The last one, it says tree must be healthy and in good condition. I think I just answered my own question as I read that again. Because I was thinking, if it's not healthy, why should it even be considered? But
So
after reading it,
Adam Mancini is our arborist for the city, and he, if someone has a question about the health of a tree or whether or not it would be considered a heritage tree, he is more than happy to go out and take a look at it and help them make that determination.
has to be healthy in order to be considered
A heritage tree.
That's what I read when I just said. I apologize. Go on.
Not a problem. Okay, so some of the other things that were changed is they do have a permit process. So rather than submitting an application, they changed all the application verbiage to permit. They described what can be attached to a tree, the placement of signage, and whether or not, a mature tree is blocking a sign. They talked about that.
They talk about pruning. You need to have a permit to prune within the city's right-of-way. And then there's some ability to vary from the tree list, but that is up to the forester to determine, and it would be a conversation that needed to be had with him. Street tree removal, there's a time frame for replacement of that, and it's determined by the city forester. They do have a Treasure Valley tree selection guide that has been updated in the last couple of years, and I think the code is old enough that it doesn't even really reference it by name, so we added that. Trees on private property, where they can be located and how they need to allow for space, and how you need to use a licensed tree contractor to do any work. We have tree protection zones, so if there's work being done, how those trees need to be protected so they don't get damaged. They talk about heritage trees, irrigation, removal of debris within 48 hours after it's been pruned, or a different time frame approved by the forester depending on seasonal issues. Safety practices, so PPE, as you all know, we kind of associate that with COVID, but every industry has their own level of PPE. OSHA standards require certain things, and so he wanted to make sure that that was listed in here as well for people who would be removing trees and wouldn't get hurt. And then again, back to the use of licensed tree contractors. Talks about pests and dead trees, so they added what exactly is a disease, and that the tree might be at risk of posing harm to someone or someone's property. Added street signs to the obstruction section. So again, street signs and tree conflicts has been a big topic of conversation for the city. And then they address abatement, builder's tree permit obligations, and how that affects self-certification and the costs associated with repair of hard surfaces and tree removal, and how that's the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. They added a new section regarding utilities and where trees can be located in respect to underground water lines, sewer lines, transmission lines, and other utilities. And then we also added a section called tree canopy preservation. And some of the adjacent cities to us, Meridian in particular, has a provision that if you have existing trees on your property and you want to develop that property, the city forester can come out and say, okay, you have these trees that you need to preserve, and if you choose not to preserve them, then you have to put in so many trees to replace them at a certain size. And so all the developers are used to this type of a code and ask me on a regular basis, well, does the forester need to come out and take a look at our development? And so we wrote that into the code as well, because we do have some properties where that may be an issue, although a lot of them are pretty vacant properties. And sometimes when they're along canals and stuff like that, they're just suckers that need to come out anyway. But at least the forester can make that decision. And then we move into Title 10, which is the Planning and Zoning Code. In Chapter 3, the only change in our schedule of uses is that we've added the cottage cluster subdivision development possibilities in the AG and RA zoning districts. And then we added wording in the footnote that says that in the AG and RA zoning districts, they shall comply with cluster development standards in Chapter 26, which is the planned unit development chapter. And then in all of the residential zoning chapters, we added a updated density chart because we're going back to gross density. And Doug's gonna talk to you a little bit about why we made that decision. You see the yellow highlighted there. We accidentally dropped off the lot width and lot depth requirements out of the chart, and we just want to let you know that we're gonna make sure that those stay in the code. You just didn't see it in the chart that you received. So we are gonna make sure that that stays in there. And then I will turn it over to Doug.
Thanks, Christy. So the chart shows, it's kind of going back to where we were before, so it's based on lot size. We are retaining the maximum lot size in each of these zoning districts, but we're going back to a density range that's stated in the comprehensive plan for each of the land uses, land use designations that these zoning districts fall under. So, for example, in the RS6 zoning district, the minimum lot size is 6,000, maximum is 12,000 square foot lot. But they still have to meet that density range of 2.5 to 8 dwelling units per acre. So that makes it simpler for the developers. We've had a lot of complaints from the developers about trying to figure out what the net density is and how much open space and how does this all work together. This really simplifies it. The end result is going to be more open space than we required in the net density development plan, and it actually gives a little more flexibility to developers to be able to locate lots that are different sizes in a wide range and meet their density requirements. So it's based on gross density. When they come in with a 40-acre parcel, the gross relates to that parcel. And so that's, again, a little bit easier for people to understand.
Less math.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what's that?
Less math.
Less math, yeah. Lots less math. Okay. So just a couple of specific items here. The cluster development language. So the ag and the RA zoning districts have a very low density. They're at 1 acre or less dwelling units per acre. But the Harris Ranch in Boise was designed with a similar type of format where there's lots of open space, but the houses are clustered together. And so we didn't have a product like that or an opportunity like that. And we've had a request up near the Boise River for a large acreage development, over 300 acres in there, that they want to cluster homes, but they want to keep a lot of open space. Similar type of thing down near Lake Lowell. So this adds that provision in there, still maintaining that very low density. And then they have to follow the guidelines in for cluster development that are already in the zoning code. So that's what this is referring to. On the specific area plans, we updated that to include Highway 16 and Highway 2026 and the specific information and the codes associated with that would help us implement that plan. And then the airport, it was crossed out, but we've added that back in pretty much verbatim. We haven't really changed anything on that. And so on chapter 22, just one change. We've been meeting with this drought task force for the last year. They just had us make a minor change to parking lots, that turf is prohibited in interior islands in parking lots, pretty much. Chapter 26 in the PUDs, MPCs, a couple of changes here. The lot size, on any lot size in a PUD or MPC, in a residential mixed use, over 50% of that needs to be residential, and then no less than 5% of that needs to be commercial. That's stated in the comprehensive plan, but it wasn't in code, so this codifies it. Community mixed use, over 50% needs to be commercial, and no less needs to be in residential, than 5% needs to be in residential or light industrial. Okay. The zoning district lot size and density is simplified based on what we just talked about. And in a PUD and MPC both, there's an allowance for a 20% increase in density and a 20% decrease in lot size for an MPC or a PUD. We're trying to encourage developers to use planned unit developments as much as possible. We moved the cottage cluster development standards from chapter 27 to 26. And we've stated that qualified open space elements are required both in PUDs and MPCs. They were only required in MPCs prior to this. Okay. Standard subdivision in lots that are larger than 5 acres, the same ratios apply for residential and community mixed use. Again, we simplified the zoning district. We moved the cottage cluster development, open space language, changed from net to gross. And then in standard subdivisions, qualified open space elements are now required in subdivisions. What this does, again, is it encourages the development to come in with a planned unit development. And so requiring that in a subdivision leaves no difference between a PUD and MPC other than getting the additional density and lower lot sizes, smaller lot sizes. So there were some changes to Chapter 33 based on the drought tolerant task force and the language. Kimberly Horn gave us this language that we've added to the code. I'd be glad to answer any questions about landscaping that you may have. If you'd like for me to go through that in detail, I can do that with you. I think couple of the most significant changes is that 75% of trees now have to be a low or moderate water using trees. They're updating the Treasure Valley tree guide so that it will list out which trees are moderate and which are low water using. So they just have to use those trees, 75% of them. And then the other thing that's kind of significant is that any subdivision, commercial, industrial, multifamily development, more than an acre, it requires a landscape architect to sign and stamp the plan because the irrigation requirements have changed dramatically because of this. There are now a set of irrigation requirements that make these sites, these new sites coming in, much more drought tolerant than they used to be. So that requires some specialization. And that's it. Christie?
Do you have any questions for us?
Got about 15.
Is that drought resist, well, you said Treasure Valley. I hope we're not moving to a Phoenix or a Las Vegas type of a landscaping, hardscaping type of a thing. But we're not.
Yeah, Chairman Octor and Commissioner, we have the same concerns. We don't want to look like Phoenix. So we do, they came in pretty hard on turf with this drought tolerant stuff. We backed away from that. And so 50% of a site can be in turf. The landscaping of a site can be in turf. It excludes parks and things where you have to have play fields and stuff like that. That can still be in turf. But we are encouraging the use of drought tolerant types of turf that have the same look, but they use less water.
Well, a lot of that's gonna be low maintenance anyways, and that's what they're gonna prefer. So, good, I don't have any, that's all, I'm good with it.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we will open public testimony for this item.
Oh, no. All those people out there.
There's nobody on the sign-up sheet, so.
Wait, Daniel
wants to talk.
Anybody here or online that wants to speak on this proposal? Take a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, what do we want to do? What happens if we deny it, by the way?
Christie's gonna be waiting for you out there.
Can you revise this as many times as you did the commercial and industrial stuff? I'll take my chances with that angry mom.
All right, I'll make a motion, we recommend approval of the City Council Code Text Amendment to change Title 5, Chapter 2, Tree Service, and Title 10, Planning and Zoning with staff findings as presented in the staff report. Direct the Planning and Zoning Director and City Attorney to draft an ordinance for reading at a future City Council meeting for the City of Nampa.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval for this item. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
See how excited?
Motion